The appointed hour is here. We'll call to order the special meeting of the MAP 3 Citizens Advisory Board for December the 16th, 2010. You have in your packet the minutes of the November 18th meeting of our group. Are there additions or corrections? Rusty?
I think maybe one correction. The name of the citizen that spoke, I think, is Mont. He's on one of the subcommittees, too. It's Nat's subcommittee, but he's not here. Do you know that, Mark? Is it Mont Gibbs or Mark Gibbs?
It would be Mark Gibbs.
It is Mark. Okay. I was going to ask Nat before we started, but okay, you got it right then. No correction from me then.
Other additions or corrections? Would you approve the minutes then? Been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of the November 18th meeting. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The minutes are adopted. We move to item 3 on the agenda. This is a recommendation of a resolution that comes forward from the Convention Center Subcommittee. Eric, would you walk us through this proposed resolution that's before us today?
I'd be happy to. I don't think this is an item that we're not aware of, but obviously we did begin the site selection process for the Convention Center several months ago with the issuance of the original advertisement in October. And the short list of firms was created in November, and those interviews were held on December the 10th. That was just last Friday. With that, we did interview 3 firms, and Populous GSB, the team as presented, has been recommended for negotiation of a contract. And so at this point, we're seeking your authorization to proceed. The contract and the exact scope of work has not been fully determined, and that's something we would be following upon your recommendation and council approval, bringing that back to you, which would include cost and time and some of the other elements of the actual study. As a part of the interview process, the teams all confirmed the scope of work that we had published as a part of the RFQ. We also received some additional input from the Convention Center Subcommittee, and I'll maybe defer that for the subcommittee reports to some extent. But there is some interest by the subcommittee to also be aware of that scope of work as it's developed as that contract comes back to you for recommendation in January. But with this, there's no expenditure of funds at this time that will come as a part of the contract. This is simply a recommendation to proceed with negotiation of a contract. Populous GSB.
We have previously outlined the process that we followed, which is what has been recommended and has been endorsed and in practice by the City Council. And Susan, I guess I'd ask you if you wanted to add any comments. Susan's the Vice Chair of that Convention Center Committee. Anything you want to add to what Eric has said?
Not at this time. We're just bringing that forward to you.
It was unanimously adopted by the subcommittee. It is in your packet. It is captioned Resolution Authorizing City Staff to Negotiate a Contract for Professional Services with Populous GSB to perform site selection analysis for the MAP 3 Convention Center. Is there further discussion? What's your pleasure?
I move for approval.
Susan, it's been moved and seconded that the resolution be adopted. Further discussion? All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The resolution is adopted. And Eric, why don't you, because this is one of the first that we've done like this, would you explain how that goes forward from us now?
So this item is scheduled for City Council approval next Tuesday. And following that approval, staff will then have the authorization necessary where I'll actually make that phone call to the principals at Populous, and we'll begin a process where we do have a boilerplate contract that we use on most city consulting contracts. The boilerplate would be that portion of the contract that has insurance and indemnity and all the general terms and provisions of contracting with the city. But the one thing that we'll work on over the next several weeks is the exact scope of work, what it takes to actually do a site selection for a convention center. Obviously, Populous has much experience in this area, so I don't think that'll be any issue. But we'll negotiate those final terms, make sure that it's specific to our community, specific to our project. We'll also negotiate a fee for that work and time to be completed in. We'll wrap that into the complete contract, and we'll go through, as recommended by the Convention Center Subcommittee, we're going to distribute that scope of work for their review early. That was something that was specifically requested by them. But ultimately, we'll be bringing back a contract in about a month to the advisory board. It'll go to subcommittee first, of course, but back to the advisory board, recommending that council approve that. In that month's time frame, we then could issue the notice to proceed and work would actually begin.
Any questions for Eric? Zane?
Yes, Eric, is there a specific date that we are looking for them to provide an answer for their proposal?
So there were the questions that were asked during the interviews was what was a typical time frame that they would be required to do such study, and the date, or at least the time frame of 90 to 120 days was expressed by all three firms. We are looking to have some responses in the March-April time frame, in the late spring time frame, to coordinate with other projects that are either MAPS 3 or city-related. Obviously, with Project 180 moving forward, we have modern streetcar and transit questions that are being asked regarding alignments of track. We also have some progress on the park. And then there's some other city projects like the downtown arena improvements and others that are, it's all affecting each other. And so we're trying to put those all onto the same schedule, including the convention center site selection, so that all the answers are completed, at least to the point where we can make those informed decisions to move forward on each. So 90 to 120 days, we're looking probably in the March-April timeframe.
Other questions or comments? Well, then let's move to item 4, real estate purchase agreements. There is included in your packet a memorandum from Eric to our board outlining this, and also including a resolution that we will be considering as an action item today. This comes from the Parks Subcommittee, does it not, Eric? And would you run through this for us?
I'd be happy to. And one thing that might make this a little bit easier is, as an informational item in your packet, is the park map that includes all the different parcels. And so as we discuss these three items, you'll notice that it is parcels V23, V24, and also V25. These are the ones that are in the middle shade of blue that are identified on there. Parcels V23 and V24 are 2 of the 5 that are necessary for the Oklahoma City Skydance Bridge acquisition. This is to start that construction early next year and make those available. And so we've pursued those. 2 of these, 23 and 24, are in that area. The third contract is actually V25. Although it's not a Skydance, it's owned by the same group. It's Downtown Properties, LLC. So as we were negotiating contracts for V23 and V24, they also wanted to include as a part of their negotiations V25. And so that's why all 3 are here for you today. Included in your memorandums, you'll see that the appraised values for V23 and V24 are included. V23 was $32,000 and V24 was $28,500. The negotiated settlements for these were reached on a per lot basis. It was requested that $25,000 per lot be considered, which is why it's $50,000 for each, V23 and V24. We believe it is a reasonable offer, and we are recommending their approval at that amount. We aren't recommending that we proceed with condemnation for the difference in cost. We believe it would far exceed this cost had we advanced that to that level, and so we're recommending both of those at this time. We're also recommending V25. In V25, the agreement from the Downtown Properties, Inc. was that if we would agree to the same per lot cost, and there's 5 lots in V25, that would be acceptable to them, and that's at $125,000 total. But in that case, you'll see it's actually below the appraised value. So when you look at the net cost or the net difference, it's actually nearly zero. There's about $40,000 in additional costs that we're looking at on the 2 parcels, but then there's a net gain of $40,000 on V25. And so as a package, we're recommending the approval of these contracts to be forwarded to council for acquisition of park property.
Are there questions? Michael, I had a memo this morning that Kimberly had an unexpected occurrence and wasn't going to be able to be here this morning, but I know you're the vice chair of that Parks Committee. Any comments on these?
Yes, Kim couldn't be here. She had a crisis, as you know, Tom, and asked me to give her report. Is that what you'd like for me to do now, or just speak to this particular issue?
Just speak to this particular issue.
The subcommittee did review these proposals, as Eric said, and approved the resolutions to take to the board with their enthusiastic support.
Further questions or comments? I'm assuming, Amanda, we need to act on each of these individually. There are 3 resolutions, And so why don't we do that? Item 4A, regarding the parcel V23, the resolution is in your packet. Would someone move to approve it? Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I had a
didn't see
question. You didn't see me.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
It's okay. How long is it going to take for the bridge to be at some point where citizens can see it's a viable thing? Is that to encourage the...
I don't know what the construction schedule is, although it's to begin basically in the spring. But let me bring that back, or I can send that out as an informational item through email. But I can bring that back for our next meeting. I don't know.
Okay, all right. That's all I had. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Anyone else? All right, then let's first consider item 4A, which there is in your packet a resolution regarding the approval of the real estate purchase agreement for parcel V23. Would you approve that? Has it been moved to approve? Is there a second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's adopted. Item 4B is a resolution to approve the real estate purchase agreement for parcel V24. What's your pleasure? It's been moved that we approve it. Seconded. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? It's adopted. And finally, item 4C is the resolution in your packet to approve the real estate purchase agreement for parcel V25. It's been moved to approve it. Is there a second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those resolutions are adopted and will move forward to the City Council. All right, we're ready for item 5 on the agenda. The discussion action regarding the Matt Street program. Eric has some comments for us.
We've obviously had a very active month this past month, and I think what I'll do is I'll just do a very brief update, at least on a project level, and then I'll make sure that we reserve the time in the subcommittee reports for any of the other details. But on the Central Park acquisition, I wanted to go ahead and invite Jovan Bullard up from Ocura. You do have the map update that is before you, and property acquisitions are proceeding. Jovan will be able to update us on the status of that. The only other project that's going on as well is the demolition of the old post office, and that is underway at this time. If you have looked south towards Southwest 5th, you'll see that the trucks are there, that they're hauling away materials. The asbestos abatement is underway, and so that project is proceeding very quickly. But Jovan, we do appreciate you this morning, and any update you can provide as well.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the Advisory Committee. Happy to report that, of course, you got the good news that 2 of the 5 properties are under contract now for the landing of the Skydance Bridge. We have on property V21 and V28, we have verbal agreements, handshake agreements with those 2. We're simply waiting for the signed contracts to get back to us, and then those will be brought back to the committee. That leaves us one Skydance Bridge property, V29. You can see it. It sort of has the hash marks on it, or I think your copy does. And that is the parcel that we're not being very successful with in negotiating with the landowner, and it has been referred to the city's legal staff, Amanda, for litigation. On that, we need to move forth with that just so it won't be settled, but at least the city can start to work once we, and Amanda can explain the process better, but once it gets to the stage where the city puts up some money with the courts, then the city can take possession of the property, and that will not stop the construction of the Skydance Bridge on that side of the new alignment of I-40. And even though the litigation might drag on for a couple of years or so, at least the city has possession of the land and the construction go forth. On just, we have just basically we're doing very well with, we have 15 of the 29 parcels, the title commitment done. We have 14 of the surveys completed. We have offers out on 4 other more properties right now in the early stages, and so at the January meeting, hopefully I'll be able to bring back some more properties that have been closed. But we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Joe, the parcel just to the right of V29 that isn't numbered. What is that not? What's the story on it?
That to the right of V29?
Yes, sir.
That's ODOT property, and the city has an agreement with the Oklahoma Department of Transportation.
So those that don't have numbered, you already have under your control?
Yes, the ones that are in that shade are the ODOT properties.
Oh, okay.
So they don't show a blue color yet because they haven't officially been transferred, but there is an agreement with ODOT and the city of Oklahoma City to make an exchange as a part of the I-40 realignment. Thank you, Joe Van.
Thank you.
On transit, obviously, there's several continued discussions and obviously schedule coordination items that are being discussed, and I'll reserve the rest of that report to Mr. Harding, who I'm sure he'll update us on the subcommittee meeting this week. On the convention center, I mentioned the site selection and the status of the contract. We'll hopefully have that back here in about a month, and we'll proceed with that following next Tuesday, assuming council makes that approval. On sidewalks and on trails, the first meeting of the subcommittee was held, and so there's not project activity that's underway, but obviously some planning that is getting ready to take place in the next month. On the river, the lighting and the windscreen projects that we initiated, the consultant selection is proceeding, and I would expect that we'll be having interviews on those in the next month. Health and wellness, the scope of work that we issued and consultant selections are underway. Interviews are scheduled for 12/28. December 28th, and so those will be held, and we would expect that we could bring back to this advisory board a recommendation to negotiate a contract in the next month. And then on the fairgrounds, the State Fair Inc. is undergoing a master plan study. They've completed a master plan, but they're making some minor updates to that, and that's an ongoing process now. But I would expect that they will be making some final recommendations for the subcommittee in the coming month. One of the things that we're fortunate with the fair is that the fair subcommittee also includes members of the fair board, and so there's direct coordination that's occurring there. But obviously a lot of work on a lot of projects. Some things are more visible, like the demolition of the old post office, and then we have several agreements that are being prepared, obviously, to move forward on several other projects. But generally, one of the items that the advisory board mentioned last month is they wanted to make sure that Architectural Design Group, our program consultant, attended the meetings, and I'm happy to report they also attended all the subcommittee meetings this week. We do have Mike Mize with us. We also have Nicole Franklin, who is going to help manage, as a part of the ADG effort, the MAPS 3 program. But Mike will be available should you have any questions to our program consultant. Next month, some of the things that I think you can expect. Of course, we're going to have additional subcommittee meetings. We're going to have additional sales and property purchase agreements for the park, the convention center site selection contract. We are scheduled to receive a presentation of the American Indian Cultural Center, which is continuing its construction efforts, and want to bring that update to the advisory board just to make sure that you are aware of all the other things that are happening in our downtown area. We will have the authorization to negotiate the health and wellness, as I mentioned, the interviews for the river windscreen. And the only other item that I wanted to note this morning is I know that we are still struggling somewhat as a staff and as a part of process in getting the meeting agendas to you timely. And my apologies there. We're still working out a few kinks in our system in the number of meetings that we're having. But my promise to you is that we're going to work very diligently next month to improve that better than we were able to do this week. And appreciate your support as we move forward. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have as a board.
Yes, Eric, I got one question. You mentioned Health and Wellness Subcommittee interviews for December the 28th. Is that already etched in stone? Because it's a lot of people probably on that committee that probably traveling, like Alamo Bowl and some other things. So, and you notice I didn't reply back to you because... So is that etched in stone? It have to be that date?
The Public Works Department assists us in the interview process, and so it's my understanding that that's the date, but it is subject to change if there is a conflict with one of the firms. But I do know that the firms have been contacted and have confirmed their attendance. And it was my understanding, and I have not looked to see if we have confirmations from all the other members, but it was my understanding that it was set. But if we need to make a modification of that, please get with me, and I'll work my best to do that.
I don't want to make it just for me, but, you know, I'm trying to find out about how many people are going to be there, because I know 2 people on that committee is big OSU alumni and fans.
My understanding is that we have confirmation from the members, but again, if there's ever a conflict with scheduling, please just respond to the invitations that you're receiving so that we can make adjustments. But I'll be happy to work with you, Mr. Dover, on that.
What is our MAPS revenue this month?
We're going to have a report on that. It's on the
Oh,
agenda.
okay. All right.
And I can address that now. It is an informational item that is included
that?
in your attachments. You'll see that it is the report ending October 31st. You'll see through the 31st, we've collected just a little more than $41 million. You will start to see expenditures here in the coming months. We actually have several contracts that we are anticipating that we'll actually start having expenses on. So you can expect in the project categories that you see below some expenses in the next cycle or two. It's a general report, and again, I can answer any questions that you have on that. We do continue to receive sales taxes that are above our target projections, and so we are encouraged by that as we proceed through the 8 years of collections of the MAPS 3 taxes.
Thank you. Mike and Nicole, I wanted to say how much we appreciate you all being here, and particularly the diligence with which you are starting, going to all the subcommittee meetings. And we're really looking forward, as an advisory board, to working with you, and we appreciate the great start we're off to. So we'll be seeing a lot more of each other. Thanks a lot. Well, welcome. Michael?
I would just comment, Eric presented the revenue and expenditure report that I wanted to thank Eric and his staff and members of the city's finance department. I had the opportunity last week to sit down with them and had some questions about how the whole sales tax process worked and how the money was collected by the state and sent to the city and what the timing was in those collections. And they were very helpful and led me through that process, and we were able to trace through, I think, the money as it's reported by the state on their website to see and tie it back to what we're seeing here. And so I felt very good about that process, and I want to thank them and appreciate their patience and cooperation in answering my questions.
Well, an endorsement by a CFO was something we all welcome. So thanks for doing that. We're glad you did. Does that conclude that part for you?
I have no
Eric?
further reports.
We are going to give every committee an opportunity. If the items that you intended to cover have already been covered, of course, there's no reason to do it again, but we're going to ask each committee, each subcommittee, to offer any comments that they have on the work of their committee so far. And I'm going to start, Susan, with you. If you would add anything that you needed to the Convention Center report that Eric's already given.
I would just like to add that having two meetings, we had the interview meeting with the smaller group, and Mike Adams and I both were present for those. And then we had our large committee meeting this last Tuesday. And the general consensus of that committee is that we're excited about the opportunity to work with Populous. We felt like during the interview process that they presented a lot of intriguing out-of-the-box ideas for us to consider, and felt like that was a nice breath of fresh air for us besides just what we know already has been identified. So we feel like we've got a good start working with a company that's dedicated. They are committed to giving this committee the time that it needs for this venture. In the process of the request for proposal, one of the pieces in there is to be sure that there's some input with the committee, some input with stakeholders, citizens. So that's included in the plan, and there'll be plenty of opportunity for conversation and discussion. So we look forward to that, and we know that we've got a good company that's there for us.
The River Committee, Dee?
Yes, the River Committee met this week, and have to compliment the mayor and his staff on picking a great subcommittee. They're just all outstanding, and a lot of them have had direct involvement with the river, so we're getting a lot of expertise. And we had a new update by Mike Knopp, and lots of great things happening, so it's just good all the way around.
Trails and sidewalks. Susan? Oh, I'm sorry. Zane, you had a question?
She's going to defer to me. She asked me to speak for her for this. We had our first meeting on
great.
Tuesday.
Good.
And I'd like to echo what everybody else has found out about the meetings and the people that are participating in it. It's the spirit of our volunteerism from the people on these committees is outstanding. Commitment is incredible. What we've decided to do is evaluate the Trails Master Plan to see if it needs to be updated and reviewed. There was a spirited discussion about that. Which part of MAPS 3 will add to the Trails Master Plan and where we're going to approach that. They were ready to kick off and start identifying some of the trails and get started working on those. We also made a commitment to focus on a master plan for sidewalks. It hasn't been addressed yet. I think Mr. Winger is going to bring in overlays from some of the city planning just so that we can see what sidewalk projects have been done or are planned in the future so we can kick off from those and not duplicate effort. So we're hitting the ground running.
Wonderful. Rusty, Fairgrounds?
We met for the first time yesterday, and same as Zane and everyone else has said, it's a great group, and the mayor and the council did a great job. Very good, informed, and enthusiastic people. Glad to have a good group. We met yesterday the first time. Eric touched on a couple things I'll add a little bit to. He mentioned there is a master plan that State Fair Inc., which manages the fairgrounds, had already come up with prior to when they were putting together the MAPS 3 proposals. It is being revised, as Eric mentioned, and it'll be brought to our subcommittee, and we'll take a look at it, and we're glad we'll have the city's input and ADG's input on the master plan that's already been created, and it's possible and most likely that then we already have a very good start and are already well on our way with what will be done out at the fairgrounds. The other item I might report from our meeting was, as a lot of the subcommittees may be talking about priority of the different projects, and it was mentioned by one of our subcommittee members, and it was commented to ADG that was in attendance, and Eric, and agreed upon by at least those that spoke up, that the fairgrounds, because it's one, an economic driver directly for the city, and because there's a plan in place, it was a comment made that priority of it might be good early in the projects. It wasn't a final decision, not a lot of discussion, but it was mentioned just for ADG to consider the fairgrounds as a potential early priority of all the projects. And that's it to report from that meeting.
Okay. Michael Dover, were you going to report for Kimberly and you on the parks?
Yes, Kimberly asked me to give her report. The subcommittee met for the second time yesterday, and she wanted everyone to know she really, really appreciated Laura's Story being there from Story Engineering to give that committee an update like we all received on Project 180 and the Boulevard and the I-40 realignment. We also had Wayne Corville from the city, the MAPS construction manager, to give a report again to get that committee up to date on the Ford Center. Of course, we went through the resolution that this board just passed a few minutes ago, and like everyone else, Kim wanted everyone to know how appreciative she is of the selections that the mayor made on this committee. She made it a point to say that there was a discussion that everyone really is on board wanting this park to be really a use for everyone, and how important that is, that it be designed in that way, and she was just really excited about that. Thank you.
Really good. Okay. Nathaniel, you want to report on transit and modern streetcar?
Yes, sir. We crammed 2 meetings into one. We met for 2.5 hours, so we really got through a lot of yesterday afternoon. Highlights, we got an update from Alternative Analysis Representative, Hub Study, and also Project 180. Highlight from that is we're really looking at what appears to be the top 2 or 3 route proposals and a synthesis of all the best ideas from different sources and also a few hub locations, 2 or 3 good hub locations. So we've really kind of honed in on what we hope is near the end, and now the hard part is actually deciding which one of the 2 or 3. But We also got educated on the federal process of the alternatives analysis and how it relates to our work and some of the timeline involved with that. And also we're trying to quantify some things because a lot of it's a kind of a cost-benefit analysis of saving money now versus being eligible for money later. And we can't make decisions unless we have facts in front of us. And at some point, recognizing that you have to make those decisions. So that's really the hard part as far as quantifying those numbers and the way forward. We also got an update from committee members on some work on different power methods. And so there's a CNG study being done, I think, now by Jacobs, showing what would be involved with the CNG transit system. And a couple of our members have looked into a so-called wireless system, which is a pretty neat kind of new technology that we could use here. So really just starting that process of educating ourselves and each other and finding out what other public information is available. And we've come to the point where we are going to have a working session at the next meeting, which is going to be the second week of January, to where I think enough of the information is in front of us to where we really just need to sit down and hash through all the issues, with each other over a map and get through that. So that'll be the next meeting. And we also talked a little bit about having a joint session with Convention Center, since a lot of what we do is involved with where the Convention Center goes and having that synergy. And also, KTOK has started to interview the chairs of the different subcommittees, and they started with the transit this last Sunday. So just kind of a heads up, partially a heads up to the other chairs, but also tune in, because that way we can learn even more detail about what's going on and support each other in that. So that's all I have.
Eric? Oh, I'm sorry, Zane.
I'd just like to add to that, thank to the staff and to ADG last night and your staff for, I know we kept you pretty late last night, so I appreciate you being there. Thank you very much.
Eric, Nathaniel makes a point that I'd like for you to address for us all to think about, and that is the joint meeting of subcommittees. He mentioned that the Convention Center and the modern transit streetcar might require a joint meeting at some time, and maybe this is a good chance for you to kind of sort that out for all of our subcommittees.
I mean, obviously, as we proceed forward with the discussions and some things, we do see some crossover, or we see some companion decisions, I guess I should say, being made. And so to ensure that we've got that continuity, it's definitely an opportunity where we can have joint meetings of the subcommittees. It's a matter of sharing agenda items, and if we're talking about things like citing a convention center and citing transit rail lines, I mean, there is questions being asked on both sides. And so we're going to facilitate that at a time most appropriate. And we can do that with other projects as well. So if similar occurrences arise, we're prepared to do so.
Good. Any questions about that? Health and wellness, Michael or Wayne, one of you guys going to tell us about that?
Well, we haven't met since the last advisory board meeting. As Eric mentioned, the next thing on the slate is the hiring of the consultant, the selection of the consultant, which should be just right after Christmas. So we're looking forward to getting that person on board so we can get up to speed and have that consultant on board to work with.
All right. Anything else from any of the subcommittees? Well, then let's move to item 7, the informational items. We've already talked about item A, the revenue and expenditure report. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Eric, or
No.
Any questions anyone has other than what we've already discussed? The B, the Downtown Central Park property acquisition update. Anything about that, Eric, that you want to add?
I think we're still on a plan and on a target to get generally the upper park acquired by next summer, and I believe we're still on that track, and we'll continue to provide monthly updates of status.
Okay, this is now an opportunity for any of the board to offer any comments or questions that anyone has. I want to kick that off, Councilman McAtee, by saying during this part of the program of our agenda where it calls for our comments, I'm always interested if there's any message from the council that you want to bring to us as a comment.
At this point, the council is very pleased with the reports that we've been getting back. Eric did give an update to the council since our last meeting, and that was very well received. And so, really, I have nothing to add to that.
Okay. Any other staff comments, Eric?
We have none.
Well, I want to open it up then to citizens who are here for us. Anyone, members of the public that want to address the Citizens Advisory Board? Well, seeing none, that concludes the business of the Advisory Board, and we will stand adjourned until the next meeting. Thank you for coming.